Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, I hope all of you had a very happy, blessed Easter. I did as well. Obviously, news has broken just about maybe 3-4 hours ago. It's the biggest story in the world. Pope Francis, the pontiff, is dead at the age of 88. He was obviously very sick, battling illness after illness. And he has now officially passed away. Many of you know my positions on the Pope. I've been a critic of the Pope and his papacy. I do not believe in speaking ill of the dead, especially when the body, forgive me, is barely even cold. So I just want to say that I hope the good Lord blesses Pope Francis and blesses his soul. But I'm not going to, outside of announcing his death, I'm not going to be covering it, at least today. Probably not in the future, next couple of days, out of respect for him. And I don't want to trash somebody who has just passed away. But, you know my position on this. I don't think he was good for the church, and I certainly don't think he was good for Catholics or for the world. He was a globalist. I was not. He took the church in a very left-wing direction. I think was a huge mistake, but that's neither here nor there. I wish his family the best, and obviously I hope the Lord shows mercy and grants him eternal peace. Now, on that note, there is no eternal peace here in the United States of America. In fact, to be brutally honest about it, and I'm not the only one that's saying this, many now have come to this conclusion. We are now, my friends, and I'm choosing my words very carefully, we are in a constitutional legal crisis. And this is not the fault of President Trump. Quite the contrary. He is the victim of lawfare again. Again. The Democrats, rogue activists on the judiciary, and in many now ways, the judicial branch, have effectively now overreached, and not just overreached, but they are now blocking Trump and blocking the will of the people. The very issue that President Trump ran on, it was his seminal issue, was that he was going to deport criminal illegal aliens. It's why I voted for him. It's why the overwhelming majority of the 77, almost 78 million Americans who voted for Trump, that's what we voted for. In fact, as Trump said over the weekend, I was voted in on this particular issue. This is the issue I was elected on by the people of the United States. But they're not allowing me to do my job. Now, in the dead of night, and again, I'm not saying this for dramatic effect, literally, in the dead of night, in Saturday at about maybe 2:30, 3 o'clock, the Supreme Court issued a stunning, shocking order. A group of Tren de Aragua gangbangers detained in northern Texas got the ACLU, which is to me nothing more than a communist front organization. You want to talk about the enemies of America? That's the ACLU. That's the American Civil Liberties Union. Well, they went judge shopping because you see the ACLU, like the Democratic Party, they don't care about the victims of illegal aliens. No matter how many American citizens, no matter how many women, children, elderly, innocent people are raped, murdered, and molested, their rights of these criminal, illegal aliens and these gangs and gangbangers and foreign terrorists come first. They always come first. And so the ACLU, listen to this, they went judge shopping. They went to Judge Boasberg and said, you got to prevent Tren de Aragua from being deported. We can't put them, God forbid, we should put them on a plane and send them to that prison in El Salvador. Boasberg said, I want to, but I don't have the jurisdiction. So then they went district after district after district. They went to at least 9 different judges in 5 different districts. They went to a judge in Texas, declined. Another judge, declined. They went to the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals based in New Orleans. It looks like they were going to be declined. They weren't yet, but it looks like they were going to be declined. So what did they do? The ACLU made an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court. And in a 7-2 decision, with only Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas dissenting, that's it. The court has ordered the administration. They have now blocked the administration from deporting Tren de Aragua, that group out of northern Texas, and in fact now on pretty much across the board. Trump now, the Supreme Court has now told him, you can't deport MS-13, you can't deport Tren de Aragua, you cannot deport gangs. We now have to settle the issue eventually at the Supreme Court. Now, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? As Samuel Alito, in a blistering, frankly, brilliant dissent, and I urge all of you, if you have the time, read it. Read it. Today on this beautiful Patriots Day. Many people have today off. It's the Boston Marathon, obviously. If you have time, look at that dissent. Holy shamoly. Alito, backed by Clarence Thomas, shreds the Supreme Court. And in particular, you can tell it's aimed at Chief Justice John Roberts. Shreds Roberts. And what he effectively says is that the Supreme Court now has overreached, that this decision to block Trump from deporting Tren de Aragua, he says, has crossed the line, that the judicial branch is no longer following the law, that the judicial branch is now violating separation of powers, that the Supreme Court is now stepping in and essentially now trying to run and control the executive branch. That throughout American history, it is unprecedented that the Supreme Court would ever tell an American president who he can or can't deport, especially illegal aliens, and not only illegal aliens, but members of one of the most brutal, violent, vicious gangs on the planet who have committed unspeakable crimes on American soil. Now, my friends, let me lay it out as clearly, as honestly, as succinctly as I possibly can. What the Supreme Court did was a crime against the Republic. What the Supreme Court did was a crime against the Constitution, and ultimately, yes, a crime against democracy. And I don't normally quote Bill Ackman, who is a Democrat, or at least was, voted for Trump this time, but beyond this, the last election, has always been a lifelong Democrat. And Bill Ackman, the big hedge fund billionaire, said, whoever gave due process when they came in. So in the previous administration, listen out, this is the reality that these courts are trying, these rogue activist judges are trying to impose upon the United States. Please listen to this. That the prior president, Joey, Dementia Joe, could allow in, whatever the number now, 10 million, 15 million, 20 million illegal aliens with no due process. None of them were vetted. None of them. There was no due process. They just let them in illegally. But the next administration that wants to deport them has to now give every single one of these illegal aliens, including the most violent criminal gangbangers, so-called due process, in which every single case they have the right to appeal if they want all the way to the Supreme Court, and will only be individually adjudicated case by case? This will destroy our democracy. 617-266-6868 is the number if you want to be part of the show. Okay, what to do now? Trump needs to move, obviously. He cannot allow this to continue. It will literally neuter and paralyze his presidency. But beyond paralyzing his presidency, again, I go back to Bill Ackman. These actions now by the judiciary, by these rogue activist, radical left-wing judges, and now looks like the imprimatur of the Supreme Court in this dead of the night ruling, which has stunned Clarence Thomas, stunned Samuel Alito. They said it's an unprecedented ruling, that in fact there was no need to even do this ruling because lower courts hadn't even ruled yet on the issue of whether Tren de Aragua could be deported from this camp, this detention center in northern Texas. And yet the Supreme Court jumped in. And as Alito pointed out, the Supreme Court made their decision without even bothering to hear the other side. They didn't even give the Trump administration, the government, a chance to present its side of the story and its facts and its evidence. It just completely assumed that everything the ACLU was saying was true. So it's clear now, and our good buddy Dave, our Western PA constitutionalist correspondent, was messaging me while we were off air, saying, Jeff, Chief Justice John Roberts is corrupt. He's bought and paid for. And I think now it's becoming more and more obvious that this friendship, this longtime friendship that he's had with Norm Eisen, who was one of the architects, the key architects of the Lawfare campaign against Trump over the last 3, 4, 5 years, clearly now is influencing his decisions. I can't read, honestly, I can't read the evidence any other way. Now, just stand back objectively, okay? Because this is what's at stake now. Stand back objectively. Bill Clinton deported, literally, millions of illegal aliens while he was president. Obama deported over 3 million illegals during his presidency. 3 million. Bush deported over, 6, 7 million illegals. George W. Bush, while he was president. Clinton, Bush, Obama deported over 10 million illegals. This is undeniable. Not one judge blocked them. Not one. Not one. So when Clinton deported, no problem. When Bush deported, no problem. When Obama deported, no problemo, baby. Trump, 100,000 deportations. So they deported millions of illegals. Trump deports 100,000 of them. Overwhelming majority. Murderers, rapists, drug dealers, gang members, terrorists. Okay, we're talking the worst of the worst. 30 blockades by the judiciary. 30 blocks by the judiciary. 3 prior presidents, a 0. Trump, and that's on over 10 million. On 100,000, 30 blockades, including now the Supreme Court. So let me get this straight. Was Clinton being a rogue president? Was he being a dictator? Was Bush being a dictator? Was Obama being a dictator? Suddenly now, no. When Trump, and this is the key, when Trump says I'm going to implement the mandate that I was elected on by the people of the United States, this is democracy. This is what it is. I ran on this issue. I won on this issue. The people gave me an undeniable popular mandate to deport illegal aliens, and in particular, criminal illegal aliens. And now you're saying I can't do it? That Tren de Aragua literally has more rights? That MS-13 has more rights? That illegals in general have more rights than American citizens? And this is the strategy. What they want now, this is what the left is now, and I think the Supreme Court's playing along, is they're saying no due process was given to the American citizens when all these illegals flooded our country under Biden. They were never vetted. But now that you want to deport them, no. You can only deport them on a case-by-case basis where they get to appeal all the way to the Supreme Court. And in some cases now they're saying even beyond. That now the UN needs to be able to step in and see if these gangbangers should be deported. Listen to this. And only on individual adjudicated cases, they want to slow walk the entire Trump presidency. They want to essentially make it impossible for him to deport anyone, or a trickle here and a trickle there, so that he cannot fulfill his promise. The illegals will be made to stay because it'll take forever to get through the courts and the court system. 617-266-6868 if you want to be part of the show. So here we are with the Supreme Court's decision over the weekend in the dead of night to now at least temporarily block the Trump administration from deporting Tren de Aragua, a plane load of them. By the way, it appears they weren't even going to be deported. They were just being detained. But it didn't matter. Even if they want to deport him now, according to the Supreme Court, they can't until the issue is fully and finally resolved at the Supreme Court level, which may take God knows how much time. But the fact of the matter is, the left now, led by the corrupt judiciary and the Democrats, are now saying that Tren de Aragua, MS-13, any foreign terrorist, it doesn't matter, are entitled to quote-unquote due process, and that they have the right now to have every case individually adjudicated with the right to appeal going all the way up to the Supreme Court. Now, just do the math. There are only 700 immigration judges in the entire country. They get a lot of holidays. A lot of holidays. They're basically on a schedule similar to Congress. They only work 250 days of the year. There's only, for the federal government, for these judges, they only have 250 federal work days. So even if they do a couple of quote-unquote trials a day, it's going to be at least 30 years. And that's just for the illegals now that were let in by Biden. I'm not talking about all the other illegals that are presently in our country. So as Steve Miller came out and said, by this standard, it will literally take hundreds of years to deport people. Like, this is insanity. It's utterly insane. And the deeper issue, and Trump touched on it, and he doesn't want to push it too far because the implications are ominous for this country. I won on this issue. I was elected on this issue. No other president has ever had an issue with deporting illegals, especially criminal illegals. Clinton deported millions. Bush deported millions. Obama deported millions. No judge ever blocked them. And no, not every illegal was given quote-unquote due process. Are you insane? Are you insane? They were deported. Why? You're here illegally. Bye-bye. The Constitution does not apply to illegal aliens. Habeas corpus and due process are not for the world. They're for American citizens. The Constitution is for Americans. And, of course, legal residents. It's not for illegals. Once you adapt now this unprecedented new model that suddenly now you can pour in tens of millions and not vet them. So there's no remember, no due process for Americans. We were never given due process. Biden just flooded the country with them. Invaders, terrorists, criminals, drug dealers, murderers, rapists, it doesn't matter. Well, you think Laken Riley got her due process? You think Joycelyn Nungare got her new process? You think Rachel Morin got her due process? You think all the victims of illegal alien crime, they got their due process? We never got due process. Now all of a sudden, the worst of the worst get more rights than the January 6ers? Where was their due process? What? Chris Van Hollen never said a peep. The Democratic Party never said a peep. The Supreme Court never said a peep when J6ers, American citizens, were rotting in prison. No due process. No charges against them. They just sat in that gulag. Pardon, excuse me, it's 6 o'clock, whatever, 6:30 something in the morning, in their urine and feces. And nothing. No emergency injunctions in the middle of the night. On a weekend. They never work on weekends, but for Trenda Aragua, the Supreme Court, they'll work on a weekend. This is shameful. This is shameful. Listen now to President Trump. Over the weekend, it was amazing. We celebrated in this great state the 250th anniversary of the famous ride by Paul Revere. Tyranny is at the door. The British are coming. The British are coming. Next year, we are going to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence and the founding of our great republic. Listen now to President Trump saying, if you keep stymieing and you keep overturning and you keep undermining and sabotaging the will of the people, in this case, judicial tyranny, through corrupt judges, and now it appears justices, there may be only one resort. Listen now to Trump. Roll cut 1, Mike.
11,088 murderers were released into our country. Bad things are going to happen. Bad things, and we're getting them out. And that's why I was elected. A judge wasn't elected to do that. I was elected to do that. And we're doing it in record fashion. We have the safest border, the most secure border we've ever had. See the Declaration of Independence? You should all read that before you leave. That's the real deal. You should all read it before you leave. Yeah.
So he was talking to the reporters. Now, the border itself is practically impenetrable. Border crossings have now collapsed, plummeted to their lowest level in decades. It's almost down to zero. So they're not coming in anymore. On that, Trump has been an incredible success. The judges now, this rogue activist judiciary, is now trying to prevent Trump from getting rid of him. Now, let me just make one last point, and then I want to go to the phone lines. 617-266-6868 on this beautiful Patriots Day. I want to hear from you, the great patriots of Kuhner country. You know, what I find incredible throughout all of this is what they're now telling us. This is effectively now what they're telling us. That they can open the borders and flood our country with criminals, with terrorists, with MS-13, with Trender Aragua, with gangbangers, with rapists, with murderers, with drug dealers. But effectively, we can't remove them. That's what it means. It means, you have to give them due process, and they get lawyers, and then every case is personally, individually adjudicated with the right to appeal, which, by the way, costs millions and could go all the way up to the Supreme Court. So you're looking at what, maybe several hundred deportations a year at this rate, which is a drop in the bucket. And you have now the Democratic Party on record, and now how many judges, and these to me are treasonous judges. I'm choosing my words very carefully. These are corrupt, treasonous judges who now want to return MS-13. They want this guy, Abrego Garcia, to come back. Bring him back. They want Trender Aragua to stay. Not to go, to stay. MS-13, not to go, to stay. To continue to murder and rape and molest and plunder and pillage. Okay, I think it's now time for Trump and Congress to put the Supreme Court, frankly, and the entire judicial branch back in their place. We believe in the rule of law. We do not believe in the rule of judges or the rule of lawyers. And we certainly do not believe in judicial tyranny. The Supreme Court cannot control or run the executive branch. They can't. I mean, this is ridiculous. They cannot tell this president who he can or can't deport, especially when we're talking about foreign terrorists and literally criminal gang members. So if the Supreme Court is blocking Trump from this, then basically the presidency has no power and elections are utterly meaningless. That's why Trump, to stand up for democracy, to stand up for the people, to stand up for the will of the people, to stand up for the executive branch itself, must come out and demand that the Supreme Court and the judicial branch stay in their lane. They must be restrained and not be allowed to overrule and overreach. Period. Full stop. And he has to address the country because we are now in a constitutional crisis, which is being forced upon us. This is completely manufactured. It is being forced upon us by the Democrats and by these rogue activist judges, with, it now appears, the complicity of or at least some members of the Supreme Court. So Bill Clinton can deport millions. Bush can deport millions. Obama can deport millions. Again, they didn't have due process. They weren't there appealing and appealing. It wasn't individually adjudicated cases, because then you can't deport millions. You're lucky if you deport hundreds. That's not that's not a problem. It's not a constitutional crisis. But now when Trump does it to just 100,000 illegals Almost all of them gangbangers. Suddenly now, the Constitution! This is a dictatorship! You have Elizabeth Warren running around on the Sunday shows like a chicken without a head. If he can disappear Garcia, he can disappear all of us. We're all going to go to that Supermax in El Salvador. These people are insane. This is insane. And they're trying to make this Trump 2.0. They want to repeat what happened under his first term. Except now, instead of using Robert Mueller and the Russia collusion hoax and all these, and the impeachments, now they're going to use the judicial branch. Now, I want to read to you a couple of text messages, and then I want to go to the phone lines. By the way, the text line is on fire today. On fire today. You can text us 70470. 70470. Jeff, Chief Justice John Roberts stayed for a week. And by the way, they partied. Just so that everybody knows, they partied together. But let that go. Stayed for a week at the mansion of Norm Eisen. Norm Eisen is behind the lawsuits taking place against the Trump administration. How are Republicans not demanding his resignation? Well, that's a great point. That's a completely great point. Here's another one. Jeff, El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, said in a speech to CPAC recently, if you don't impeach corrupt judges, you cannot fix the country. They will form a cartel, i.e. a judicial dictatorship, and block all reforms protecting the systemic corruption that put them in their seats. And that's what we're seeing now, a cartel. A judicial dictatorship with unprecedented decisions, violating separation of powers, and literally now crippling and neutering, gutting the executive branch. Okay, let me just one more, and then I want to go to the to the phone lines. This is from 508. Jeff, I need somebody to explain this to me, like I'm a 2-year-old child. Why can Biden grant temporary protected status, TPS, to illegal aliens by executive order, millions and millions of them, but President Trump can't revoke temporary protected status to the very same illegal aliens by executive order? Well, you see, that's the key. They can bring him in without due process. Now they're saying you can't kick him out without, quote unquote, due process. You see how the game works? Huh? You know what? Let me get one more in. One last one. 781. Jeff, we only have 2 justices, Alito and Clarence Thomas, on the Supreme Court who are willing to deport foreign terrorists without individual court hearings for millions of Biden-era invaders. The Supreme Court, with its decision over the weekend, is trying to give the Trump administration an impossible job. We are witnessing the attempted establishment of a judicial dictatorship in America. Bingo. You're a genius, 781. Bingo. To stop Trump, it is now the judicial branch that has gone rogue. And they're basically saying, to hell with the voters, to hell with the election. The people don't run this country, we run this country. And it's time we tell them, no, 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 no. A fascist in a black robe is still a fascist. Agree, disagree, in this country, the people rule. That's what 1776 was all about. That's what Paul Revere's historic ride in Boston to Charlestown was all about, that we celebrated over the weekend. It's time now for us to put the people first again. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Let me ask all of you the question before the House. Do Tren de Aragua and MS-13 terrorists and gangbangers, remember, dangerous foreign nationals, illegal aliens, do each of them deserve due process and have their cases individually adjudicated in the court system like they were American citizens? I say this is insane. What say you? 617-266-6868. Nancy in Framingham. You're going to kick us off, Nancy. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Nancy.
What I would like to see happen is Trump needs to do what Roosevelt did during World War II, do a fireside chat on the radio. But instead of the radio, he needs to get on TV every single night, every single channel, for maybe 15 or 20 minutes and explain the situation, what is going on. And what I would do is just simply say, okay, you've overstepped. Of course, you know that Congress is not going to do it because they're just simply gutless. So what I would do is declare martial law, get all the buses going to every single one of these places where all the illegals are staying, because they're all criminals, not just the ones that are committing the criminals. Everyone that steps over this line illegally is a criminal, and they should not have any rule of law, period, and just simply start deporting them. But do a fireside chat and calm the people down why I am doing fireside law and explain. Mark Levin had a program last night explaining what was going on with the woke of the Supreme Court, that they have no business of ruling over the president. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think he may be forced into it. That's my fear. You know, in other words, if they just let him do his job, which is what his constitutionally obligated, mandated job, which is as the President of the United States and the executive branch, which is to protect and defend the homeland. His job is to deport people who came here illegally. Especially, you're right, they're all criminals. You're completely right, Nancy. But especially the worst of the worst. So if he can't deport foreign terrorists, and he can't deport MS-13 and Tren de Aragua, well then, why do we need a president? I mean, this is what I mean. This is becoming so absurd. We're like living in a fantasy land now. So, and look, again, Obama deported them en masse. Bush deported them en masse. Clinton deported them en masse. So there was not a problem then. Now there's a problem? No, they're trying to sabotage his presidency. And they're clearly getting involved in an area of the presidency, in the jurisdiction that is none of their concern. It's none of their business. Now, look, if this is how the Supreme Court wants to play, this is what's going to happen. Someone is going to come up with this conclusion. Well, if the Supreme Court can nullify the presidency, then the presidency can nullify the Supreme Court. I mean, I'm sorry. The Supreme Court wasn't elected. The president was. The Supreme Court has no democratic legitimacy. The president does. So in any major clash between the presidency and the Supreme Court, the president's going to win. He should win. So this is now, Roberts is cutting his own throat. I don't know if he realizes this. What we need to demand, and again, this is why you need leadership in a time of crisis like this. People of character, people of integrity, frankly, people of guts. There needs to be an immediate investigation into Chief Justice John Roberts. Because I don't want to get to the point where Trump has to declare martial law. Now, if he has to, and I'll back him. Believe me, I'll back him all the way. but I know what the blowback is going to be. The backlash is going to be immense. And I'm afraid these left-wing idiots, if they're already blowing up Tesla dealerships and lighting cars on fire and attacking people just for the crime of driving a Tesla, what do you think they're going to do when he declares martial law? They're going to be yelling and screaming, Hitler, 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 Hitler. I mean, they're going to take it to the streets. So I'm trying to avoid this. Now, just let Trump do his job. Just get out of the way. I mean, he's deporting people. That's what the president does. That's clearly his delineated responsibility and authority under the Constitution of the United States. And every other president before him has done it without an issue, without one judge ever issuing an injunction or a block or a temporary restraining order. Not even one, once. So come on. I mean, this is ridiculous. So I think what Trump is going to have to do is tell Congress, where's Mike Johnson? Okay, where's Mini Mike? We need a thorough investigation immediately of Chief Justice Roberts, because he's clearly being compromised. He's clearly being blackmailed. And I believe it's the Epstein files. And I believe that's one of the reasons why Pam Bondi, for whatever reason, is not releasing them. Because I think the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, I believe, went to Epstein Island. And God knows what he did to children on Epstein Island. And it's clear he's being blackmailed. And now we find out that he did study sessions. He went drinking, eating. There were parties with Norm Eisen, who is the one behind all of these lawsuits, have been for years, and now in the courts against Trump. So that's a blatant conflict of interest. He and his buddy is doing everything he can to destroy the Trump presidency through Lawfare. And you guys were partying together? And you guys were drinking and eating together? No. No, he's conflicted. That's a blatant conflict of interest. So, look, Congress has to act. If they don't act, I'm telling you, Trump's going to declare martial law. Well, what else is he going to do? We're going to let Trendor Aragua stay? We're going to let MS-13 stay? So we're going to sit back and allow American citizens like Laken Riley or Jocelyn Ngare or Rachel Moore, and I could go on and on, Kayla Hamilton. So what? We're going to continue to get raped and killed and butchered? And we're going to tell the world the United States is powerless to get rid of the most notorious, brutal gangs in the world that were allowed into our country illegally? It's a suicide pact. In fact, look, Nancy, let me just say one last thing, and I want to get back to you. This is not an original point. This is what the Europeans now are saying. You've got to see what the Europeans are saying. It's not what the mainstream media, what you would think the mainstream media is saying. Oh, they're looking at Trump and they're saying dictator. This is not the America we know. No, the Europeans are saying the exact opposite. If you Americans, the last remaining superpower in the world, if you can't kick out Trendor Aragua and MS-13, what are you going to do regarding Islam? What are you going to do regarding radical Islamists and Islamic terrorists? You're basically saying to the world, we're powerless. That these liberal judges are going to keep giving them rights and rights and rights and rights that they don't have to make it impossible to get rid of these people. So we will be utterly powerless in the face of an Islamist insurgency. In other words, we can't defend ourselves. This is an attempt at suicide. I'm telling you, honestly. What these judges and the Democrats are saying is you cannot defend yourself. You have no right to defend yourself. If someone breaks into your home, squats in your home, murders and rapes and steals in your home, they have a right to a lawyer and to multiple appeals before you can even think of kicking them out of your home. To put it in a very simple micro way. That's essentially what they're telling us. This is, and Trump's looking around like, are these people serious? And he hears from one angel mom after another, after another, after another, after another. And he says, I can't get rid of these people. As they're killing and murdering and raping one American citizen after another. They're doing kids. They're doing teenagers. They're doing women. They're taking over apartment buildings. Nancy, he may have no choice. It's coming down to this. I mean, is that, so we're going to have to, what? He's going to have to declare a national emergency? Declare martial law? Nancy, final word to you.
I think that, but in order, he could do that, but I think he needs to get on TV with Mark Levin, get a few of them, a few people that are constitutionalists, and start explaining why he's doing it. Just like during World War II, Roosevelt got on TV and was explaining every single night what was going on. And I think what I would like to see is Trump getting on television for 15 minutes even half an hour on all the channels, not just Newsmax and Fox News especially. And he needs to get out why he is doing what he is doing and explain the Constitution of what he has the right to do. And if he does that, then I think people will understand that he's not a dictator, and I think it would be a good idea I think he should do it anyways, because people that voted for him said, well, I don't like what Elon Musk is doing, and all I say to them is you have no right to complain. He said he was going to have Elon Musk. He said he was going to deport. He said he was going to do the swamp. Let him do his job and go with him. And I love everything he's doing beyond. And I think he needs to get on television, fireside chat every single night, and explain why he's going to have to do. But will he declare martial law? I don't know. I don't know whether he.
Well, I think we're getting. It's a bit early. It's still. I mean, look, Nancy. I think it's heading towards that, but it's still a little bit early. He's got a couple of other options. I think he's gonna exhaust, and probably should exhaust. This is, that's the political nuclear option, is to go with martial law. So I think he's going to do a couple steps before that, but that could be where we're heading. I mean, Nancy, I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't. Nancy, very thoughtful call. Thank you very much. No, look, as one of the people on Messenger messaged the Kuhner man said, Jeff, look, this is the reality of the country that we're in now. Like it, don't like it, it doesn't matter. That's the reality. It is what it is. We're in a soft civil war. Hard civil war is guns, bullets. So far, it's not guns, it's not bullets. But the media, the Democratic Party, this lawfare, these suits, these restraining orders, these injunctions, that's their version of bullets and ammunition. Trump has to come to the realization they don't respect elections. They don't respect popular mandates. They just don't. You're in a war. Like FDR was in a war during World War II. And you have to treat these people now like they're your enemy combatants. You have to. You have to treat them for the enemy that they are. And I think that's why he has to start addressing the country. I agree with you. Speak directly to the American people. Get around the filter of the media and explain to them, you elected me to do this very job, which is fully in my power as President of the United States. And yet now I've got judges blocking me. I've got the Democrats blocking me. I've got people being blackmailed on the Supreme Court now, apparently blocking me. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, the Supreme Court now, at least temporarily, blocks the Trump administration from deporting Tren de Aragua gang members. An incredible decision in the dead of night, completely unprecedented, a violation of the executive branch, the separation of powers. The Supreme Court now is arrogating to itself authority it has never had before, which is now to dictate to the president national security policy and who we can and can't deport. It is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Remember, we're not dealing about, say, internment camps for American citizens. We're not talking about the civil liberties violations of American citizens. We are talking about deporting dangerous foreign nationals who came into our country illegally. Hardened, vicious, brutal, murderous criminals. One of the deadliest gangs on the face of the earth. A group now designated as a foreign terrorist organization. And our president can't deport them? Okay. I don't know what... we don't have much of a country left, I'll tell you this. And you can kiss democracy out the door. And that's exactly what many, I'm not the only one, many are now saying. We are now in a constitutional crisis. Many are now saying this. If the will of the people means nothing, if winning elections means nothing, if Trump saying I was elected to do this job and you won't let me do my job, then we've got a serious crisis on our hands. Agree, disagree? Thomas in Methuen. Thanks for holding, Thomas, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
Good, good. How are you? I had a great Easter. Thank you, Thomas. What's on your mind?
Well, Jeff, I think Roberts is compromised. I think Bondi ought to release the Epstein tapes. I think a lot of that goes back to that exact thing. And as for Kash Patel, where is he? Where are the Republicans? Where's Congress? These people ought to step up and do their job. Let's start looking at the China money. That China that owns the media, all the money that China, they're saying they want to take over America without firing a shot. It looks to me like they're well on the way with these compromised politicians. When is somebody going to step up and start taking care of the people? The country is supposed to be run by the American people. Our wishes, our mandates need to be followed through with. I think Trump, if he has no choice, will declare martial law. And the first thing we ought to do is bring back, the Smith-Mundt Act. We ought to bring that back because that fool Obama got rid of it so he could control the media. And there you go. That opened the door for China. We need to do some things here that right away. Trump needs to act. Congress needs to act. And those stupid fools in the Senate, that idiot McConnell, he should have been long gone years ago. He's tied to China. So let's be real about this whole thing. Let's start bringing back our country. It's 250th anniversary over there in Lexington. Let's do something about it. Maybe we ought to do what the Dems do and go over to the Supreme Court's houses, Roberts' house, and pick it out in front. Maybe we ought to start doing that. Well, I know we're supposed to have class. We're supposed to be calm. We're Republican. Well, something needs to be done, and it needs to be done right away.
Well, I think, look, there's only one solution now, and you touched on it. We're going to have to reclaim our rights. The citizenry now has to say, no, we're done. We've had it. We voted again and again and again, and you're not listening to us. So now we're demanding that you do what we tell you to do, or else we're going to retake our government. And look, that's why it's slightly off topic. But that's why, Thomas, this Thursday at noon, I mentioned this on Friday, but I want to mention it again. I'm going to be speaking at a major rally at the State House, right in front of the Boston Common, just 3 days from today, April 24th, to tell the Department of Children and Families, you want to talk about violating people's rights, you are not going to seize 5 children from an innocent couple a good, decent, loving, innocent couple, the Riveras, simply because they refuse to vaccinate their very healthy, well cared for 9-month-old baby boy. You do not destroy parental rights. The children do not belong to the government. This is communism. Now, I'm telling you, I'm not trying to rile people up. I'm just giving you I'm just giving you, as an historian, what they are doing now is worse than what King George III did. I'm telling you. They're making claims and doing things that even the King of Britain at the time wouldn't dare do. Now, I'm not saying pick up a gun. I'm not saying pick up a musket. All I'm saying is this week, most kids have the week off. My kids, there's no school this week. It's time for parents to show up. It's time for citizens to show up. If you can, bring your kids or your grandkids. It's going to be about an hour, hour and a half. But it's time that we told them we're fed up. We're done. The message has to be sent. The citizens will not be denied. And our rights are not for sale. And they're not there. Ultimately, look, I'm sorry. I'm not going to put the safety of my children and the safety and greatness of this country at the whim of a couple of rogue idiots, or as you rightly put it, blackmailed, corrupt idiots, bought and paid for by communist China, who happen to wear a black robe. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, I want all of this to just settle in for all of you. Okay? Just let it sit in your mind for a second. This is from a very good friend of mine. He's a constitutional law expert. I don't want to give away too much in terms of his background, but let's put it this way. Teaches and has been teaching constitutional law for decades and decades and decades. Is one of the most respected constitutional law experts in the entire country. Here's what he texted me on my personal cell phone. Jeff, let this sink in. The Supreme Court has never before in our 250-year history interfered with the right of the executive branch to deport illegal aliens. Let me repeat it. The Supreme Court has never before in our 250-year history interfered with the right of the executive branch, i.e. the president, to deport illegal aliens. And all of a sudden now, they're blocking Trump. They're suddenly all of a sudden blocking Trump. Not to repeat myself, but this bears repeating. Okay, I said 10 million. Many of you are texting and emailing me saying, Jeff, I'm sorry, you're wrong. It's 20 million. I said millions under Clinton. Millions deported, illegal aliens, en masse under Clinton. Millions under Bush, en masse. Millions under Obama, en masse. Not one time were they ever blocked by any judge. And almost none of them had individual deportation cases where courts personally vetted the deportation, individually adjudicated. What are you, crazy? It's going to take us 500 years to deport these people. Many of you are saying, Jeff, it was 10 million just under George W. Bush alone that were deported. Bill Clinton had 5, 6, 7 million. Obama had over 3 million. They're saying, Jeff, you're saying 10 million. It's really 20 million. I'm going to go on the very conservative, cautious side. 10 million deported under those three presidents. Not a problem. Not once. Trump, we're only at 100,000 illegals. Almost all of them criminal, violent, illegal aliens. Murderers, rapists, drug dealers, MS-13, Trent or Aragua, okay, you name it, gangbangers. Already 30 times judges have blocked him. 30 judicial blockades, including now the Supreme Court of the United States. You can't make this up. This is a judicial coup. Make no mistake about it now. This is an attempt by the judiciary to literally take over the executive branch, seize control of the government, and nullify the will of the voters and the will of the last election. One of the biggest traitors in our country, you want to talk about, forgive me, a POS, a piece of you-know-what, is Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen. He's the guy that went to El Salvador, and now we have the pictures and the photos. Shook the hand of an MS-13 gangbanger, a wife beater, a human trafficker. Kilmar Abrego Garcia. They had margaritas together. They were sipping margaritas together. This guy sits down, breaks bread, and drinks with an MS-13 criminal. Listen now to Van Hollen. He finally flew back. By the way, he admitted it. This was all paid for by you and me. He's in violation of the Logan Act. He violated the Logan Act. To me, how this guy has not been arrested is, where the hell is the FBI? Okay, but let that baby go for a second. Listen now to Van Hollen. This is him on NBC. Roll cut 3, Mike.
I'm not sure why Abrego Garcia's rights should be denied based on an awful murder that he had absolutely nothing to do with.
Talking about Rachel Morin, a constituent of his, or was. She was a Maryland resident. And I'll tell you why, okay? You POS, I'll tell you why. Because he belongs to the same freaking gang that raped and murdered that poor woman who had 5 children who now don't have a mother. That's why, genius. And when she was raped and murdered, you never lifted a finger. You never called her mother, Patty Morin, to even just say your condolences. You never held one press conference to say we're going to get the killer. This guy never visited the border once during 4 years under Biden. He never showed 1/1000th of the concern for Rachel Morin and Kyla Hamilton, who's another one of his constituents, slaughtered and butchered by MS-13. But you run to kiss this guy's ring and to sip margaritas with him? This guy, who, by the way, it now broke. Okay, this story broke late last week, according to a major newspaper in Tennessee, now corroborated by other multiple media outlets. Garcia was caught in a truck. He was arrested by police in Tennessee, driving a truck with 7 illegals in the stuffed in the truck. And the cop said, he's got 7 illegals. This is human trafficking. He's trafficking 7 illegals. So they called the FBI. Literally, they called the FBI. And they said, look, this is one for you guys. This is under Biden. We got a guy, Abrego Garcia, okay, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And yeah, no, he's in a truck. He's got 7 illegals packed in the back. I guess, what were they? $10,000-$15,000 a piece? Is that that's what they charge to traffic human beings across the border? And he goes, you guys want the case? You want to arrest them? You know what Biden's FBI said? Nah, just, you know what? Take the guy's name down and take a picture of the license. We'll get to it when we get to it. They never got to it. Trump released a photo, the most damning photo of this entire case. MS-13 tattooed on Garcia, on Abrego Garcia's knuckles. And The tattoos that all MS-13 gang members have on their knuckles, MS-13. And this clown, why should his rights be violated? What rights have been violated? He's a criminal, illegal alien. He has no business being here. By the way, just so that you know, a judge already ordered his deportation. That's the amazing thing. He already had his day in freaking court. So how many days in court is this guy going to have? And then you had one insane judge in 2019 say, oh, by the way, admitted he's MS-13. By the way, 2 judges in 2 separate courts, immigration courts, 2 of them said he's MS-13. He's obviously MS-13. MS-13 said he's MS-13. A police informant who infiltrated MS-13 said he's MS-13. And then one insane judge, his defense argued, don't deport me. They said, deport me. Okay, I'm here illegally. I'm going to be deported. Just don't deport me back to El Salvador. That's his country of origin. By the way, he's only a citizen of El Salvador. And they're like, well, why? That's your country of origin. Because you see, since he's MS-13, other gangs want to kill him once he gets back. So don't send him back to El Salvador. And just says, okay, deport him anywhere else. Just don't deport him to El Salvador. And what did Trump do in his administration? Blank off. What, I'm going to deport him to Mexico? The Mexicans will say, we're not going to take him. He's not one of ours. What am I going to do? Deport him to Guatemala? Nicaragua? Where do you want Russia? Where do you want him to deport him to? No, he's a citizen of El Salvador. There's only one place he's going to go, El Salvador. And why does Bukele have him in the Supermax prison? Because he's MS-13. That's why. And you go on about his due process rights? Van Hollen's like, why should his rights be taken away? He doesn't have any rights, you clown. You idiot, as the Russians would say. 617-266-6868 is the number. Russ in Boston. Thanks for holding, Russ. And as always, welcome.
Jeff, our turncoat Supreme Court has made a travesty out of the rule of law. This is a slap in the face for those who lost their lives on the green 250 years ago. They lost their life to free us from occupiers. We must fight to deport invaders. These invaders, as far as I'm concerned, are just as bad as the occupiers. They're causing more havoc than anything else. And let's never underestimate the American left's ability to regroup and fight another day. They will never surrender to the common good. The Congress must override the turncoat Supreme Court. The Congress must be reminded this is a constitutional republic by the people and for the people. It's not by the hack activist judges and for the hack activist judges. Things are upside down, and Roberts should be impeached, that SOB.
Russ, if you're advising the president right now, and you're now faced with this clear constitutional legal crisis, what would you advise him to do? Many are now saying he should declare the National Emergencies Act. Many are saying he should declare martial law. How far do you think the president needs to go?
What I would do if I was a president, the first thing I would do is I'd call in the Speaker of the House and the President of the U.S. Senate. And I would say, look, what are you guys going to do about this? All right. And I would set up a game plan, and they should attack first, and then the president should go on the air and back both of them up. That's what should happen. The Congress must act here. They must get off their rear end and have some balls for change.
In other words, Russ, you're saying before we even talk about martial law or declaring a national emergency, you're saying give Congress a chance to rectify and resolve this situation, correct?
By doing that, you're taking steps in the right direction. And you know damn right well, if he turned around and declared martial law, he'd be crucified for it, for sure.
Well, that's why you're right, Russ. That's why I want him to exhaust every legal political means before we get to that point. And you're right. Look, Congress has got to move. Now, I'd like to read part of Alito's dissent. I may even do that later in the show. But trust me when I tell you this, it was a blistering, absolutely blistering dissent. I've never seen a Supreme Court justice write anything like it. That's how out of control he says, his own words practically, that it's unprecedented, it's legally dubious, it's never been done before, what you guys are doing now. And he says, yes, the executive branch must follow the law. But he said, so must the Supreme Court, and so must the judicial branch. Like he's telling them, you're not following the law. You're completely now interfering in the executive branch. We've never done this in 250 years. I mean, he gives it to them with both barrels. So Alito is basically saying, do you understand what you're doing, Chief Justice Roberts and the liberals on the court? He goes, do you understand? You are triggering a constitutional crisis, which may destroy the credibility of the Supreme Court. Like you're preventing the president from doing what the Constitution says he has every right to do, and that every prior president has done without it being an issue whatsoever. Like, you're creating or manufacturing a crisis, and this may not end well. Like, in other words, you're the ones being lawless, not Trump. Russ, honest to God, did you ever think you would ever live in the United States of America, where we now have potentially a rogue Supreme Court?
As we say this to people around my age, and I say this is not the country we grew up in, is it? And not one of them disagrees with what I say. This is not the country I grew up in. This is not the country that I love. The American left has invaded all of our institutions, and there's only one person that can change this, is Donald Trump. And if he's not allowed to do this, we are doomed. It's over. Okay, the United States is going to go bankrupt. Okay, we'll no longer be able to support defending the world in freedom. It's not going to happen anymore. It's over. It's over. It's over if Trump is not allowed to turn this around.
Russ, thank you very much for that call. Let's go to Bob in Plymouth. Thanks for holding, Bob, and welcome.
Thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure,
I don't know, there's just a little bit off subject, but yesterday on Fox between the hours of 10 and 12, they had that moron Juan Williams on, and he said that woman that appeared, that was at the White House, the one whose daughter was murdered with the 5 kids, he said that was done as a publicity stunt to increase ratings. I couldn't believe he said that. That's how whacked out these lefties are.
Well, if one of his children were raped and brutally raped and murdered in the most heinous way imaginable, and his senator was pleading to return members of the very gang that did that to his child, I think he'd have a very different perspective. And I think, to be honest, Bob, look, I'm really being serious now. It started off as a joke. It started off as a kind of a put down, as a good, sort of you kind of just stick it to the other side. I'm telling you, it's true. This is now factually, empirically true. Liberalism is a mental illness. We say mental disorder. It really is a mental illness. It's a mental illness. And we know now, we've done tons of studies, how miserable many liberals are, how many of them are afflicted with all kinds of serious mental issues, all kinds of very serious mental issues. And it's becoming very obvious now. To me, think about this. You embrace and side with mass murderers, child molesters, and rapists against innocent American victims, there's something seriously wrong with you. Like, there's just something wrong with you. And then, I don't know if you saw this case. It's huge. The New York Post did a big story on it, but so did the rest of the New York media. It's a woman by the name of Natasha Cohen. Now, check out irony of all ironies. Bob, you got to listen to this. She's actually a mental health therapist. That's her job. She does family therapy, mental health therapy for children, adolescents, and married couples. Okay? So you would think, well, she's a mental health therapist, right? She's sensible, she's balanced, she's mature. She just got arrested for keying a Tesla car. Blatantly, and not just keying it, she then took a brick, and when she pelted the car with the brick had scrawled on it the Nazi swastika, and then she wrote Nazi. And so the police, and she was caught on video. So the police arrested her and they brought her in. And this is what she said. This is when she's arrested. Elon Musk made me do it. And they're like, what do you mean Elon Musk made you do it? She said, you don't understand. When I look at a Tesla, all I can think about is Elon Musk giving the Nazi salute to America. That's all I can think about. And that he's deporting people without due process. People are being, this is what she's yelling and screaming in the police station. People are being deported without due process. America's being transformed into Nazi Germany. I can't take it anymore. Now, either she's unbelievably ignorant. I'm talking, Bill in Sudbury, Frank in Gloucester, stone cold stupid. Or she's mentally ill. Deporting criminal, illegal aliens is Nazi Germany? Lady, are you mad? Saying hi to people in a crowd, as almost every politician does, with their right hand, and they just put up their right hand like, hey, 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 is suddenly now a secret Nazi salute? She's sick. She's mentally ill. And the sad thing is, almost half the country is as ignorant and mentally ill as her. And I think, in all honesty, I look at Chris Van Hollen, I go, the man's not mentally not right up there. He's not operating with a full deck of cards. He has a couple of screws loose. You meet with a man who has MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles, who was caught trafficking 7 illegal aliens, who is a member of MS-13, who beats his wife, who's a known criminal in El Salvador, who's part of one of the most dangerous, vicious gangs on the face of the planet, who, by the way, when he was deported, was bragging, saying, I'm not afraid to go back. I'm not afraid to go back. Okay, tough guy. Now you're back. What's your problem? And you go and defend him? And the poor mother who lost her daughter, whose 5 grandchildren of hers no longer have a mother, after she was brutally raped, repeatedly, by the way, and then murdered, and this senator never lifted a finger, never did a thing, never even mentioned her name, yet you attack the mother for asking the media, where's the compassion for us? How come you never talk about the victims? What about my daughter's due process? What about her rights? What about Laken Riley's due process rights? What about that 11-year-old girl, Joycelyn Nagare's due process rights? He never talked about that. So we don't have due process rights? But this scumbag does? And then this guy runs on Fox and says, it's a publicity stunt. It's to get more attention. You're sick. I'm telling you, you're mentally ill. You're a mentally ill individual. And so, look, if I were Trump, I'd call their bluff. Enough is enough. That's the only. You've got to do shock therapy to stop, to confront mental illness sometimes. You want Tren de Aragua? You want MS-13? We have to put them right in your home. If these people are not the threats that all of you keep claiming, no problem. Put 2 of them in every home, every liberal Democrat home. Put them in their home. Literally, put them in their home. By the way, there is a judge. You can look it up, Bob. There is a judge in New Mexico, a Democrat judge, who was now forced to resign. You know why? He had a member of Tren de Aragua living in his home. This story just broke over the weekend. Some of these judges, God is my witness, are harboring gangbangers and drug dealers and rapists and murderers in their own home. Come on, Jeff. You got to be making this up. Look it up. The story's everywhere. That's how corrupt some of these judges are. They're literally in bed with the gangs. Impeach them, defund them, and rein them in. If Trump doesn't get Congress to move, and if Trump doesn't do it, his presidency is finished. And the conclusion most Americans are going to make, and it's going to be a very sad and very dangerous conclusion, is that elections don't matter. Well, we vote him in to deport illegals, and we're being told we can't deport them. That they have literally more due process rights. Illegal aliens have more due process rights than American citizens. Now, this country no country can survive what the left is trying to impose on us. This is communism. It's communism. It's a judicial coup. It's time to stand up. It's time to stand up. Bob, thank you very much for that call. Agree, disagree. Look, I'm telling you, very few issues this is the issue, the hill to die on. This is the hill to die on. 617-266-6868 is the number. And again, I just want to give a reminder. This Thursday, high noon, at the State House in front of the Boston Commons. Boston is going to rise. Kuhner country is going to rise. Join me for this rally. It's going to be a huge, mega rally to reunite the Rivera family and to start taking our rights back. It starts at the local level. If we don't reclaim our rights, no one else will. So, my friends, I'm asking you. It's, spring break for many of the students. They're not in school. If you can make it during noon, it's going to be about an hour, hour and a half. I'll be speaking. There'll be others speaking as well. Americanmade Action is sponsoring the rally. It's going to be a rocking event this Thursday, April 24th, noon. It's going to be about an hour, hour and a half at the State House, steps at the State House, right in front of Boston Common. If not us, who? If not now, when? Tom in Framingham. Thanks for holding, Tom, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Tom.
This is directed at the Supreme Court. This is what I'm about to say. Nice work, you gas bags of the Supreme Court. Crying Cav, Gorsuch, Roberts, and of course, over-promoted Queen Stupid, Amy Coney Barrett, all sided with the libs against the security of United States citizens in previous lower court rulings about the illegality of bribe and mass parole programs like CHVN and CBP-1. This latest Supreme Court ruling says that gang members, Tren de Agua fancies themselves as a corporate cartel. in this country illegally are entitled to due process. I thought Gorsuch would know better. He's probably paying something off. You swampy elitist do-nothings on the Supreme Court will now be as culpable as the judge's children in committed rapes. Next time one of these deportables who didn't get deported commits one of these crimes, think of Amy Comey Barrett and her coffee-stained teeth.
Tom, honestly, very powerful. And, notice, Tom, when Biden unleashed the floodgates and violated immigration law and blatantly violated the Constitution and allowed 15, 20 million, whatever the number was, when these criminals were pouring into our country, did the Supreme Court step in and say, we're blocking you? No, you as the president, you must enforce the immigration laws of our country. What you're doing is criminal and illegal. They said nothing. They stood by and did nothing. Now they're going to block Trump from trying to clean up Biden's mess? So the previous administration can flood the country with criminals and terrorists, but Trump now doesn't have the right to kick them out? Right. You're insane. And look, they're already committing crimes. You don't have to even do it, not even say go to theory and say, well, when it happens or what. No. The longer they stay, the more crimes they commit, because that's what they do. Murder is how they make their money. Rape is how they make their money. Drug dealing is how they make their money. Remember, just to be initiated into MS-13, that's just to get in, you got to either commit a murder or a rape. So those knuckles of Abrego Garcia with MS-13 on him, you know how we got him? He either raped or killed someone. And you're fighting to have him come back? Phil in Missouri. Thanks for holding, Phil, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for taking my call. Just couldn't Trump declare a national emergency, okay, to meet with the the head of the Senate and the head of Congress and say, listen, you guys need to act on this immediately. Is this dire a situation? Give them a deadline of 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And if they sit around and do nothing, then just ignore the court order, continue with the deportations, and force Congress to act. Because the narrative is now shifting from getting rid of illegal immigrants to supporting the very foundation with which, the country's founded on. And that's what I would do if I were him. Just force Congress to act. Because they're not going to do anything. I wouldn't expect anything from that.
Well, just so that you know, Trump posted pictures of the prison in El Salvador and the airport in El Salvador. And there's plane load after plane load after plane load. Now, he didn't say anything, but the message is clear. The deportations have not stopped. So he's essentially saying, blank you. He's defying them. He's defying them without saying he's defying them. So and Phil, you're completely right. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, joining me now is the co-founder of Americanmade Action. This is the incredible group that will be sponsoring Thursday's rally at noon at the State House that I will be speaking at, and I'm urging all of you Kuhner country to attend. Ann Vandersteel, Ann, how are you? And welcome to the Kuhner Report.
Jeff, I'm great. Thank you so much for covering this subject. I mean, really, we are at such an inflection point in history. A good friend of mine, Floyd Brown, who is an incredible journalist of his own right, put a post up in a Signal chat that I'm in with him, and he wrote, "Breaking news, mass shooting event outside Boston. An extremist group upset over recent tariffs with a large cache of recently banned assault weapons began a shootout with state National Guard units as the government attempted to raid and seize the weapons. Multiple citizens and Guard soldiers killed. National Guard units have withdrawn. The government is searching for ringleaders. Samuel Adams, Paul Revere, and John Hancock, dated April 19, 1775. And if ever, I know, right? We're reading this and we're all going, oh my gosh. And then we see the date and we start to laugh, but we laugh in earnest reflection of who we are and where we are at this time right now, Jeff. There is never a more significant time in the history of our country, save the American Revolution. And American-Made Action is getting behind the fact that our constitutional rights have been completely discarded. Forget trampled. They trampled on them and they tossed them. We don't even have a functioning constitution that is in operation by the current regime that we have that has infected all levels of government from local to federal. And this is the moment, President Trump, we elected him. We had a mandate in November of last year to restore the republic because he told us he was going to return power to the people in his first inaugural address in 2017. But, the part that the people forgot is that it's up to us. We, the people, have to do this, which is why American-Made Action is sponsoring this big event outside the Massachusetts state legislature. We have to do this. We absolutely have to get together and stand for our rights. And what you're talking about this morning with all your guests is nothing short of historic in the fact that you're speaking truth to power. This is the Constitution that we need to defend and uphold, and our public servants simply aren't doing it. They're completely obfuscating the truth. They are doing word salads with the language, and frankly, they weaponized amendments against our own constitutional rights, and they're giving everything to the illegals.
Yeah. No, you're so right, Ann. And look, that's why I'm so looking forward to finally meeting you in person and having this massive rally this Thursday, noon, at the State House in front of the Boston Common. And I've got to ask you, we've only got a couple of minutes left. What I'm getting from a lot of liberal listeners is they're saying that because illegals are on U.S. soil, by the sheer fact of being on U.S. soil, they are entitled to due process. They're entitled to have their deportation cases individually adjudicated with the right to appeal. What say you?
Well, again, in very simple terms, Amendments 11 through 27 are about stealing our sovereignty. They should be abolished. We should repeal all those amendments. They were completely, this should never have happened. But because they have the illegal alien defined as a person, and if you look under U.S. codes under the definition of a person, not only is it people and corporations, but it includes illegal aliens. So they are basically word salading the fact that you are a person into now giving you a 14th Amendment right, because they don't define it as just as U.S. citizen. They talk about the 14th Amendment. So they're extending due process to you under the definition of person. And in fact, an illegal alien is somebody who violated Article 4, Section 4 of our Constitution. So how can you be here legally if you didn't even come through a custom and border checkpoint? You've just crossed through an open area of the fence on our wide open border unsecured. This is, this is such a bastardization of what our founding fathers, architected 250 years ago, and they're doing this intentionally so that they're creating this massive color revolution inside our country. And we have to get back to basics, Jeff. If we don't get back to basics and define who we are based on the Constitution and then examine what the 14th Amendment really did to our country and talk about the truth of the 14th and the 13th, in fact, all of them, we will never fully understand and realize who we're supposed to be. This is how fundamental it is. It's not complicated. It has been made complicated. And so we're going to unwind that, and we're going to extend those due process rights to the Rivera family, and we're going to strip them from the people that didn't come here lawfully. And that's what we need to get back to.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And we've got about a minute left. How is it that Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Obama, I could go on, deported literally tens of millions of illegal aliens, no so-called due process rights? They were all deported en masse. No court cases, no individually adjudicated cases. That was no problem whatsoever. Trump does it. It's a constitutional crisis. 1 minute, Ann.
A real problem with our elections right now. Talk about consequences. If we can get back to paper ballots with this executive order Trump has signed and actually have real elections and show the color of this country, we can actually get representatives who will stand on the Constitution. What we have is representatives that are bought and paid for. Only 435 members of Congress, 100 in the Senate. It's easy to buy 535 people. But we need to have true representative form of government. And it's got to start with people who really believe in the Constitution. And if you have that, then you'll have no problem supporting the deportation of people who violated Article 4, Section 4, including Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3. Remember, Jeff, not one governor stood up and repelled a foreign invasion in their state. They moved them around instead and pushed them deeper into our country.
And you're going to be speaking on Thursday. I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to meeting you. Okay. This is an email I got from a liberal. I get many of these every show. Jeff, you are oversimplifying due process rights. These members of Tren de Aragua have due process rights simply for being on U.S. soil, with like 15 exclamation points. Get that through your thick skull, with another 15 exclamation points. So, see, notice, it might makes right. We're going to assert this right, and assert this right, and assert this right, even though we know it's a complete legal constitutional fiction. And they're going to cow us into, accepting the fact that now dangerous foreign nationals who have no business being in our country, who came into our country illegally, who broke the law coming in, suddenly now have the same due process rights as American citizens? Are you crazy? On what planet? On what planet? As I spoke about with Ann Vandersteel. So, by precedent, let's just go by precedent. How come Obama deported millions? They never got due process. They were all deported en masse. Bush, 10 million en masse. Bill Clinton, 12.2 million deportations en masse. They weren't giving a due process. They weren't giving the right to go to trial and have a court case and have an individual adjudicated case. What are you, nuts? So you're literally now inventing something out of thin air that foreign terrorists, and remember, Tren de Aragua, MS-13 have been designated now as a foreign terrorist organization. So foreign terrorists and criminal, violent, illegal aliens suddenly now are entitled to protections under the 14th Amendment? Right. Keep smoking that crack pipe. No judge said so under Obama. No judge said so under Bush. No judge said so under Clinton. By the way, no judge said so under Reagan, under Nixon, under Johnson, under Kennedy, under Eisenhower, under FDR. For 250 years, the judicial branch, the Supreme Court in particular, never interfered in the executive branch when it came to the deportation of illegal aliens. For 250 years, never before were due process rights extended to criminal illegal aliens and foreign terrorists. Ever. Suddenly now, you get this through your thick skull. The Constitution does not apply to non-citizens and illegal aliens. Can you comprehend that? We are not the Constitution for the world. And just because you break into our country illegally, illegal, it's a crime, doesn't confer to you automatic protections under the Constitution. Now, if you came in like I did, under a work visa, and then with a green card, and then you apply for naturalization, in other words, you're a legal resident, yes, then constitutional rights are applied to you, of course, but that's because you're being vetted. In other words, due process, criminal background checks, drug background checks. You're not a dependent upon the government. You're not here to take money, live on welfare, be a ward of the taxpayer. You're not a terrorist. You are agreeing to abide by all the laws, including how you came into this country. It's incredible how all of a sudden now, literally, they are giving more rights to illegals than they're willing to give to American citizens. J6ers got no due process rights. Not one judge complained. Not one liberal complained. Not one Democrat complained. All of a sudden now we're supposed to cry for Abrego Garcia? I want to read this text because I think this text pretty much hits the nail on the head. You can text us 70470, 70470. This is from 512. Jeff, President Trump needs to declare a national emergency with regard to foreign gangs. This is the legal tactic Lincoln used during the war between the states to suspend habeas corpus in defiance of the courts. He must articulate what your lawyer friend noted, plus the history of Lincoln, explain to the public from the calm of the Oval Office that we are now in a constitutional crisis with this judicial coup, then declare a state of emergency and ignore the Supreme Court and carry on with the deportations. And by the way, Jeff, it's no secret that Justice John Roberts despises Trump. This is personal. Of course it is. Of course it is. He's doing the bidding of Norm Eisen, who's literally the architect of all of these cases in court right now, and all of the lawfare against Trump going back for years. So they're not only very good friends, they don't just belong to the same clubs, and have often been seen together. He literally spent an entire week at Eisen's mansion in the Czech Republic. Caviar, champagne, parties, late-night parties, apparently legal study sessions among themselves. What was discussed? Probably this. So, look, Trump's going to have to go to Congress and say, look, guys, either you rein the Supreme Court in, and I mean now, and you rein these rogue activist judges, and I mean now, or I'm going to have to declare a national emergency. Because we've got Biden just allowed alone 20 million. There's at least another 20 million on top of that 20 million. Now, we're not going to take half a millennium to deport people who came here illegally. Because as you well know, they're going to apply anchor babies once they start having children. The plan is to keep them here and to prevent Trump from being able to deport them. To stymie his administration, to block his administration, to paralyze his administration, to make it impossible for him to implement his election mandate to deport illegal aliens by the millions, with violent criminal illegals and foreign terrorists at the top of the list. Either we have a country or we don't. Either we have a presidency or we don't. Either we have a democracy or we don't. Either elections matter or they don't. It's really, honestly, it's that simple. And I'm sorry, but this is judicial tyranny. Political thugs, Democrat activists, masquerading as judges in black robes, is not a constitutional republic, and it's certainly not democracy. It's a judicial dictatorship. And our founding fathers warned us precisely against this. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Let me put the issue right on the table. Do gang members, MS-13, Trender, Aragua, do criminal illegal aliens, they're illegal aliens who have committed violent, heinous crimes, are they entitled to due process rights? Their so-called day in court, where they can appeal the deportation and have their case individually adjudicated by a judge, whether it takes 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever it is. Do they have the right to due process? I say, hell no. What say you? 617-266-6868. Mike, how much time left? All right. The Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's quality roofing, siding, and windows. The Supreme Court, do they have the right to block President Trump from deporting gang members? Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. That's right. I misread it. I'm sorry. Will President Trump, let me give you the poll question again, sponsored by Mario's. Will President Trump defy the Supreme Court, who are now blocking him from deporting gang members? Will he defy them? A, yes. B, no. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my friends, it's a tad long, but I want to read this from someone who clearly knows the Constitution and clearly knows the differences between rights and privileges, and really explains in a paragraph everything the media, the Democrats, and liberals or leftists are getting wrong. So here it is. This idea now that somehow, quote unquote, due process is somehow entitled, that gangbangers or gang members or criminal illegal aliens are entitled to so-called, quote unquote, due process rights. This is from 781. Jeff, the idiots who wail about, quote unquote, due process have no clue about the term. The term means that you get the processes, quote unquote, due to you. Those processes differ, here it is now, depending upon one's status as a born citizen, naturalized citizen, green card holder, or various visitor visas. These idiots in the media confuse quote unquote rights with quote unquote privileges. Yes, all people in the country, legal or not, have the protection of the Bill of Rights. They can't be forced to testify against themselves or be subjected to cruel and unusual punishment. No foreigner, however, has a quote-unquote right to be here. The branch of government that grants these privileges has the right and power to retract these privileges to foreigners. Only born citizens have the absolute right to be here. Even you, Jeff, as a naturalized citizen, and this is very true, under certain circumstances are subject to deportation back to Canada. You would get more due process, but those gang members who came illegally and have criminal backgrounds have none. Bingo. Here, let me just give you a quick example. I'm a naturalized citizen, okay, as you know. I took an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States and to be loyal to the republic for which it stands. I would never do this, obviously, but just indulge me. Say I became part of a terrorist organization. Say, I became part of ISIS, or I became part of Al-Qaeda. In other words, I called for the overthrow of the American government, and I became a terrorist. The United States would have every right to revoke my naturalization. They would have every right to take away my citizenship and say, I'm sorry, he's actually really originally born in Canada. That's his country of origin. You know what? We don't want him anymore. Bye-bye. Bye. Put him on a plane and send him back to Montreal and don't ever come back. Bye. As a naturalized citizen, as an obvious example, I don't have all the rights that a natural-born citizen has. Obviously, I can't ever run for president. I can't ever run for vice president. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. And by the way, I completely agree with that. Naturalized citizens should not be allowed to run for president. The founding fathers, genius again. Only natural-born citizens should be allowed to be president, okay? But let that go. Here, permanent green card holders, permanent legal residents, I don't know, they can't vote. They can't run for elected office. So what I'm saying is different degrees of citizenship or different degrees of you being allowed to stay in the country also means different degrees of rights. Now, a criminal illegal alien does not have the right to stay here. On what planet? And let me just flip it on the left. Let's leave theory out of it for a second. I go to Paris. I'm just using France as an example. I come into their country illegally. You think I have the right to stay if they want to deport me? You think I have the right to due process in France? That the French taxpayer has to pay for my lawyer fees? And I can go there and get every case individually adjudicated? And I can appeal all the way to the Supreme Court of France? They would laugh in my face. The French government would naturally say, you violated French sovereignty. The rights of the Constitution of France do not apply to you. You're on the first plane out. Bye-bye. But the mother of all parliaments, okay, Britain, okay, with Parliament, the mother of all parliaments, you go into Britain illegally, and you commit further crimes you go to England illegally, and you commit further crimes in England. Bye. Bye-bye. What due process? You're not given the right to due process. No other country in the world. If you enter the country illegally, you get the right to due process. Especially if you're part of a murderous gang or a terrorist organization. Hell, here, in France, you can look it up. You can be a citizen. You can even be a citizen, say like Algerians from Algeria, where your family has been in France for several generations. If you commit terrorist crimes or you're part of a terrorist organization, they can strip you of your citizenship and ship you off to Algeria blank you. Even though you haven't been in, your family hasn't been in Algeria or lived in Algeria for literally 3 generations. All of a sudden now, we're the only country in the world that is a dumping ground for every prison, every mental asylum, every terrorist organization, and they all get to have the right to a lawyer with multiple appeals. Again, never been done in 250 years in American history, ever. Never under Biden, never under Obama, Never under Bush, never under Clinton, never under Reagan. I could go on and on. 20, 30, 40 million people deported en masse. Never had due process. Suddenly now, Supreme Court and these rogue judges have due process. They need a lawyer. No. You came in illegally, you get kicked out, period. Now, look, guys, if you really want to be brutal about it, I'm starting to come to this conclusion. We'll just dump you in Mexico. We'll just dump you anywhere. We don't owe you to take you back to your country of origin. But this Garcia case, oh my God, it's El Salvador, it's that Supermax prison. Okay, we'll dump him in the desert in Mexico. Go back the way you came, on foot. I mean, seriously. I mean, we don't want to do that because this guy's a gangbanger. He's MS-13. Who knows who he'll kill or rape? In Mexico or wherever he ends up going. But my point is, so if we can't deport them back to their home country, then where the hell do we deport them? The Supreme Court not just overreached, they crossed the Rubicon, they crossed the line. Never in the history of America, 250 years, have they ever interfered in the executive branch and the deportation of illegal aliens. They just did it in the dead of night over the weekend. Trump has to defend himself, the country, democracy itself. He's got to tell Congress, you put the Supreme Court in line and the judicial branch in line. If not, I will. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Nick in Weymouth. Thanks for holding, Nick, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. Hey, let's talk about due process. What's due them? They need to sit before a jury. They need to sit before a judge that makes a decision. You stay or you throw them away. But what's preventing that? Let's look at the District Court of Columbia. 29 judges. 29. 14 of them are seniors collecting full salaries forever till they drop dead. And I'm an older person, so I guess I'm qualified to complain here, right? Forever. They also have inactive senior judges getting full pay, right? So what the system needs on the judiciary side, literally and figuratively, would be a colonoscopy, right? You now have a guy, the ringleader is Roberts. He was put there 20 years ago. So till he drops dead, like a Stalin, like a Hitler, like a king of the monarchy. They're there till they drop dead. Well, that's fine, but we shouldn't be paying for it till they die. Okay, I ain't saying he's ancient and needs to go. He just needs to go. He is not part of the last legislative mandate. He is not even part of the previous legislative mandate. I'm talking previous presidential elections. This goes back to Bush, who wasn't such a great president. Bush the second, if you will. So that has to change. On the other side, the problem is the Senate. They have a judiciary committee. The House has a judiciary committee. They need to reorganize and determine, did they figuratively, right, or they literally delegate the responsibilities to that guy. He runs the FISA court too, okay? He shouldn't even be picking the FISA court judges. They take turns, 5-6 years, right? He shouldn't be doing that. The president or the Senate should be doing that. So he's like a little king there, right? And they do, the other judges, except for Alito and Thomas, those are the only two, as you could just see, that you truly can rely on to do something in the wishes of the current president, who he didn't pick Thomas, he didn't pick Alito, right? But those two guys are only ones that are justified, do the proper thing to support the Constitution. The others, I don't know who controls them except for Roberts, but it's right. So that all has to be exterminated and changed.
No, Nick, you're dead on. And look, Nick, just to piggyback off, you're completely right. And to piggyback off of what you're saying, it's obvious now. I mean, it's as obvious as the sky is blue. Roberts is corrupt and compromised. There's no question. There's no question now. Now, whether it's Epstein Island, whether it's his adoption, which we know now is illegal, but let that go, whether it's money to China, but it's clear now Roberts is a corrupt Chief Justice. And when you start palling around, you're hanging around and drinking champagne and eating caviar and, salmon fumé, as they say, smoked salmon, with late night parties with the architect of the lawfare and all of these cases against Trump, Norm Eisen, you got problems, man. You got major problems. And then you've got Amy Coney Barrett, who I think clearly they've threatened her kids. This is a well-known story. So her children have now been threatened. Now, is she being blackmailed? Is she afraid to rule in certain ways because they're holding a gun, the proverbial gun, over the heads of her children? I don't know. But this is not the Amy Coney Barrett, I'm telling you, of 5 years ago. This is a different woman. The way she's ruling now, I can't recognize this woman. So something is happening. The courts have been compromised. And Trump has to realize, and he does, this is now a mortal threat to his presidency. Now, look, if he didn't care, he would just say, okay, fine, screw me, I don't care. I'm a billionaire. I'll just ride off into the sunset. But if he's going to achieve what he wants to achieve, then he's got to stop this now. Because by the time they're done, he's lucky if he gets 500 deportations a year. I mean, they will tie his hands. They'll put him in a straitjacket. His deportations will stop. And the larger point is this. It will then entrench judicial tyranny. The Obama-Biden strategy of stacking the judiciary with these activist judges, by the way, most of whom are not even born in America, a third of whom have no legal expertise whatsoever. Whatsoever. They have no grounding in the law, no grounding in the Constitution. So, think Nancy Pelosi and you give her a judgeship. I'm serious. Think AOC and you give her a judgeship. I mean, that's the kind of people that they're throwing on the courts. So, look, Trump now has got to protect his presidency because they are going to devour him. And they're going to block everything. And more than that, here is now the precedent that they're establishing. If you can't deport Tren de Aragua, and you can't deport MS-13, or it takes forever, to the point that essentially you can't deport them. 1 here, 2 there, 3 there, 5 there, but essentially you can't deport them in significant, substantial numbers, as every previous president was able to do. Then what you're saying is you're going to turn this country into El Salvador before Bukele. We will become the murder capital of the world. What you're saying is you cannot win the war on crime. You cannot crack down on these dangerous gangs. You just can't. And you certainly can't crack down on radical Islamic terrorists. As the Europeans are saying, if you guys can't deport MS-13, what are you going to do with these Islamists? Then your country's become a suicide pact. They live in a bubble. The Boasbergs of the world, these rogue judges, the Roberts of the world, the Sotomayors of the world, all of them, the Elena Kagans of the world, they live in a bubble completely disconnected from reality. Their decisions are not based in law. They're not based on precedent. They're not based on the Constitution. They're not based on reality. It's time to rein them in. 617-266-7610. 6868, agree, disagree. Debbie in Milton. Thanks for holding, Debbie, and welcome.
Yeah, hi, Jeff.
Hi, Debbie.
I want to just let you know, I think pretty much most of us are in agreement. I think Trump should completely ignore the Supreme Court latest judging. He was elected to keep Americans safe and to get rid of the criminal illegals first. And what it is, these justices are not reading the Constitution correctly. And we've got these people over here, they're sucking off our system, draining our system, killing our, women and raping our children. Not all of them are doing it, but there's a lot of them doing it. The ones that aren't doing it, they're sucking off the system. In order for Trump to be able to be the president that we elected him to do, he has to ignore them and just go forward and keep going forward.
Debbie, do you think many in the audience, not all, but many, are saying it's time for him to declare a national emergency, invoke the National Emergencies Act, which is what Lincoln did, by the way, during the Civil War. And what that did was it suspended, habeas corpus, so he can deport anybody. I mean, literally, not American citizens, but he'll have full reign. The courts can't stop him. Nobody can stop him. It's essentially martial law. Should Trump go nuclear and invoke martial law? Or do you think he should do it step by step?
No step by step. We do it step by step, it's going to be too late. And it's already too late. We're 4 years too late because of Biden. Okay? He let in millions and millions of unvetted people in here, and half of them are collecting stamps and Medicare, and the other ones we don't have identifications on. They came in here with no vaccinations. And then you've got criminals. Now, here's the deal, and this is just my thought process. I don't know if they were told not to go after black women and children and just whites because they want it to be the white against the black thing. I don't know. But that seems to be the trend. That's the only thing that I thought of. It doesn't matter. Neither here nor there. They don't belong here. They came over here illegally. And if they can't afford to fly them home to their countries, kick them over the border where they came. If they came into Mexico, kick them out to Mexico. Do what you got to do because we don't want them here and we cannot afford them here. And by the way, Governor Haley had a surplus before she allowed them to come into our city. And Baker, who I did not like, had, I forget how many billion surplus. Now we're in the negative with Haley. And she's looking for ways of getting, tax money, this, that, and the other thing, and the redirect funds to afford these illegals. And it's just not fair to the rest of the country. It's not fair to veterans. It's not fair to the poor or the elderly. And there's no need of them to be here. It's putting the country in great danger because we don't know who's here. They didn't have any identification. And all of a sudden they come in, they have new lives and, new everything and everything's handed to them. And they didn't put them all in one place. At first they did, but they're scattered around. And it's just a dangerous thing. The president took the Constitution very faithfully to protect the American people. That's priority. And by the way, in the UK, if anybody were to look up England in the UK, it's happened over there. They have illegals over there causing havoc, too.
Oh, no, UK's in big trouble now. I agree, Debbie. Big trouble. In much worse trouble than we're in. Not that we're in good shape, but it's much worse there. It's really, really bad. They're being completely overrun. But, Debbie, on all your points, you're dead on. Thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Dick in Hudson. Thanks for holding, Dick, and welcome. Mike, was that you or is that Dick with the music? That's Dick in Hudson with the romantic music on in the background. All right. Sal in Boston. Thanks for holding, Sal. I mean, I don't know if Dick's on a romantic date or whatever. Sal in Boston. Thanks for holding, Sal, and welcome.
These people are lunatics. That's all I can say. Me and my wife are driving through Newburyport on Saturday, and all I had to do was look at the people's faces when I was driving by, and they look so unhinged. It's unbelievable. And I blame the media for all this. I blame the CNNs and the MSNBCs and, all these, obviously, these rogue judges for doing this baloney. And I actually was talking to my wife, and she's like, well, he does have a case. I'm like, well, how is this guy who was declared a terrorist, who stepped on land knowingly that he's not supposed to do this, how does he have any rights? And that's what people don't understand, and I don't get it.
Sal, what do you think Trump's next move needs to be? He's got the Supreme Court now blocking him. He's got the media relentlessly attacking him. He's got Democrats now saying that the second they win, should they win the midterms, and it's going to be a big if, but should they win the midterms, they're going to impeach him on the spot. What should Trump do?
Mike Johnson has to step in and grow a spine and have an emergency session with Congress and try to do something first before Trump does something, because, if the Orange Man bad does something, he's going to be vilified for it. So I actually think Trump should try to see if Mike Johnson can do something with Congress to get something passed so we can bypass these rogue judges and do it the right way. But even if Trump does it the right way, he's still going to be vilified. So either way, if Trump declares martial law or tries to do it the right way, he's just walking into a brick wall, I think. It's awful.
Sal, you've got several Supreme Court justices that are in their late 70s. Sonia Sotomayor is getting up there. She's got some pretty serious health issues. A lot of people are saying she may not be able to hang on for another 3 years, hoping a Democrat wins. If Trump gets another crack at a Supreme Court justice, Brett Kavanaugh's been okay. Gorsuch has been okay. Amy Coney Barrett has been a disappointment as far as I'm concerned. Who should he pick, and what should be his criteria? Because I almost get the sense that it seems that no matter who he picks, once they get in there, they begin to change. So who would you like to see Trump put on the Supreme Court?
Be honest with you, Jeff, I have no idea. It's just anyone, like you said, anyone he picks, he's going to have to vet very carefully. But I think he's taking a gamble with no matter who he picks. I don't know, who do you think he should pick? I would be interested. Who do you think he should pick?
Well, honestly, Sal, I would have said even a year ago, I would have said Ted Cruz. I think he's got a great legal mind. He's immersed in the Constitution. He's, to me, on at least philosophically, a very solid conservative. But now when I see how cowardly many of these justices are, and how so many of them can be blackmailed, corrupted, intimidated, swayed by the Washington media, the Washington press corps, and it's also the glamour factor. You get all of this fawning attention. If you, Roberts now is loved in Washington. He goes to all the cocktail parties. They love him. Suddenly now Amy Coney Barrett's getting nice positive press. So, that's another thing I tell people. Don't underestimate the spotlight, the fame, the glamour of now, you were a conservative, but now you're kind of quote unquote evolving, as they say. So I don't know if I would trust Ted Cruz, to be honest. And I'm thinking now more, you need a loyalist. You need someone who's going to be loyal to MAGA and loyal to Trump. Obviously somebody with some, really some intellectual chops who knows the Constitution. Maybe Ken Paxton, the Attorney General out of Texas. To me, I think he'd be a better AG. But what you need is you really need someone that is not going to bend and is not going to go backwards. Because right now, there's only two true conservatives on the high court. Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas. And Alito, again, I have to tell you, Alito is emerging now, to me, as the Scalia of the court. He has, some of his writings, his rulings have been phenomenal. This dissent is one for the ages. It's causing ripples everywhere. It is powerful. It is courageous. It is damning. I mean, it's legal, it's judicial, of course, it's polite, but he takes the court to the woodshed and intellectually destroys them for blocking Trump. It's remarkable. In many ways, it's remarkable. So we need another Alito. We need another Clarence Thomas. Are there any? That's the question now. As always, Sal, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Okay, so many of you are asking, where's Congress? And in particular, where's the Senate Judiciary Committee? Where's the House Judiciary Committee? Well, I want you to see now the kind of opposition, not just that Trump is facing, but that the country is facing. And in particular, all of you, whether you're in your cars, you're at home, whatever you're doing on Patriots Day today, Jamie Raskin is talking about you. He's not just talking about Trump or his cabinet or his inner circle or the Kuhner man or Tucker Carlson or whoever. No. He's talking about you. Every single one of you who either voted or supports Trump. So I want you to listen to this. This is the ranking member, one of the top officials, top members of Congress on the House Judiciary Committee. He's literally now taking a page out of the communist playbook and saying, when we come back to power, and he says we will, whether it's in the midterms or in the next election after that, but we will come back. We are going to retaliate, and it's going to be revenge and retribution against every single American who voted to put Trump in the White House. Listen now to Raskin. Roll cut 14, Mike.
I like that idea, and it's a compliment to something that we need to be doing right now, which is engaging in far more work of transnational democratic solidarity with the democratic governments and the democratic movements and peoples and parties of the world to try to prevent the spread of the lawlessness and the fascist chaos that's been unleashed against us. But implicit in it should be the idea that if and when we come back to power, and we will, we are not going to look kindly upon people who facilitated, to use a word of the day, who facilitated authoritarianism in our country. Because that's an assault on our Constitution and on our people.
We're not going to look kindly on people who facilitated fascism and authoritarianism. So now Trump is unleashing fascist chaos. He's now setting up what, a junta, a dictatorship? Because he wants to what, deport illegals? Are you nuts? Like seriously, you, are you insane? But now they're openly telling us, like the communists, when we come to power, we're coming after you. And you know what? We were too kind before. We won't make that mistake a second time. So what? They're going to jail us? They're going to imprison us? What are they going to do? Persecute us? Well, I mean, how far are you willing to go? Now remember, Raskin's father was a former communist academic. His old man was a Marxist. His old man was a big follower of the Soviet Union, an admirer of communism all over the world. This is what communists do. And these are the judges that they're empowering to block, undermine, and sabotage Trump so that his presidency fails, so they can come back. And when they come back, they're not just coming after him, they're coming after us. Now, you want to see just how whacked out, how kooky, how crazy the left has now become? This is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a rising star, their words, not mine, that she's now like AOC, like Michelle Wu, like Maura Healey, like Gavin Newsom. She's now a new star on the horizon for the Democrats. So, you know the MS-13 gangbanger that they're all trying to get out of prison out of El Salvador? Abrego Garcia? Listen to what she says about Abrego Garcia and comparing him to President Trump. Roll cut 11. Mike.
Kudos to Senator Van Hollen. And honestly, that's what it looks like to be an elected representative. He represents Maryland. This is someone who is a Maryland resident, and he decided that he was going to go down there and check on him. And honestly, I don't know that I was convinced that he was alive. I really don't. And so I was happy to see that he was alive, number one. But number two, if Senator Van Hollen can get down there, if the president can get up here and get to the White House, then I don't understand why we can't get Abrego up out of there. I mean, we know that they admitted that they were wrong. Now they're trying to double back and say, well, he's this terrible person and all this kind of stuff. But here's the reality. As far as I'm concerned, he's a lot less criminal than the person that's sitting in the White House. Because last time I checked, he doesn't have any criminal convictions. I don't even think he has any outstanding cases versus the guy that still had cases pending when he was sworn in on January 20th and also has 34 felony convictions.
This woman's a nutcase. She's an absolute, I mean, you're talking about a whack job. And this is on MS Left BC. And the interviewer is like nodding the head up and down. Like, oh yeah. Oh, Trump's a worse criminal than this MS-13 gangbanger. Well, much worse. Much worse. The media lied about Abrego Garcia again. He beat his wife on multiple occasions. She had to file restraining order, called 911. They said that he was this wonderful husband. That's a lie. They said now he's this wonderful father. He's got 3 children. What beautiful children. He's a loving father. 2 of the 3 children aren't even his. She had him with 2 different men. The only child that he has is the youngest one. He's got MS-13, the exact gang symbols, tattooed on his knuckles. She put out a meme with his fist, but blurred out the knuckles so you can't see the gang affiliation and replaced them with little hearts. And that's the picture that the media is now pushing to the public. Cover up the MS-13 tattoos on his knuckles and replace them with these hearts. The guy who was caught red-handed by the police in Tennessee with 7 illegal alien passengers in a truck. He's a human trafficker. He was trafficking women and children. They caught him. The police calls the FBI. Says, okay, you got a guy, he's a human trafficker. We found 7 illegals in the back of the truck under Biden. This is Biden's FBI. Biden's FBI then says, let him go. They're like, what? No, let him go. Get his name. Take a picture of the license. We'll get him when we get him. They never got him. And you're going to bat for him? You're enthusiastically embracing him? Van Hollen goes to El Salvador on our dime to shake his hand? To eat with him? To break bread with him? To sip? They're They're sipping margaritas together. He's sipping margaritas with an MS-13 criminal. And a wife beater, and a human trafficker, and a terrorist. On your dime. And he's a hero. Van Hollen is a hero. And Trump is just shaking his head. He's like, am I in the Twilight Zone? Like, what country am I living in? So listen now to Trump. He's asked about Van Hollen visiting Abrego Garcia in El Salvador. Roll cut 2. Mike.
Photos have emerged of Senator Van Hollen sipping what appears to be margaritas with Abrego Garcia down in El Salvador. Do you encourage other Democrats to fly down to El Salvador and meet with this illegal alien who's been accused of...
I like this guy. See, now, this is the kind of a reporter we like. There aren't enough of them. We got to get some more of them. But, no, I appreciate that question. No, look, he's a fake. I know him. I know them all. They're all fake. And they have no interest in that prisoner. That prisoner's record is unbelievably bad. If you would go into the room, you might, if you would, Caroline, maybe go into the room and see if you can find that little slip. I wrote some things down. I don't know why you'd want to keep him. But I just, we got a little biography of him. Not a very innocent guy.
That's putting it mildly, Mr. President. That's putting it mildly. And the Dems want to bring him back. So the Dems now are on record. Trender Aragua, we want them to stay. MS-13, we want them to stay. In fact, we want to bring them back in. Once Trump's deported them, no, bring them back in. So they are telling us to our faces, Kuhner country, you know what I can't stand? Is when I'm minding my own business, really, I'm just getting ready for the last segment of today's show, and Mike asks me a question. I don't ask Mike. I'm not volunteering anything to Mike. I'm not, telling him, hey, Mike, if I ran the Boston Marathon, this is so fast I would run it. He asks me, Jeff, how fast do you think in the current condition that you're in? I'm not saying working out, training, conditioning. Right now, we pull you out of the studio because, the marathon began about, what is it, Mike? Maybe half an hour ago? Anyway, whatever it was, 20 minutes ago, half an hour ago. So if we pulled you out of the studio, Jeff, and we put you at the starting line, how quickly would it take for you to run 26 miles? And I said, in the shape that I'm in now, Mike, he said, yes. I said, probably about 3 hours and 10 minutes, maybe 3:15. And he's like laughing. I don't know why he's laughing. I said, Mike, I never insult you. He's laughing, giggling. No way, you're BSing me. You're lying to me. I said, Mike, why are you being so offensive like this? Like, why the insults, Mike? Now, if I was in top shape, like when I was in high school, because, I was a very good cross-country runner, long-distance runner, I could probably do it in about 2 hours and 45 minutes, 2 hours and 50. So then Mike is saying, you're BSing, you're lying, this and that. I go again, Mike, with the insults. When have I ever insulted you, Mike? So Mike says that he thinks he could do it in 5 hours. If he doesn't die first before he gets to the finish line. And he just started laughing now, uncontrollably. I said, Mike, I walk the marathon in 5 hours. 26 miles, I walk that in 5 hours. Forget running it, Mike. I walk it. And now Mike is still laughing in the background. So, Mike, if you don't like my answer, why do you keep asking me the questions? You know what I'm saying? 617-266-6868 is the number. CJ in Boston. Thanks for holding, CJ, and welcome.
Jeff, if the closest Big Mac and Diet Coke were in sight, you could do that marathon probably in under an hour. But seriously speaking, on this issue with these judges, Jeff, The only question that needs to be asked is when the Constitution was drawn up, do those rights and privileges and guarantees, do they apply to American citizens or to the free world? That's the only question that needs to be asked here. And what Trump needs to do is he needs to go to the court of public opinion. And he has to basically say anyone who agrees to allow murderers, rapists, and terrorists to stay in the United States of America, including judges, you will be arrested. Who's to say you can't arrest a judge, a circuit court judge? They're aiding and abetting these people. And that's why I constantly refer to this as the Democratic Communist Party. Now they've gone to the Supreme Court, and we see what they're doing now. Policies that have been applied to other presidents are now being stopped. What could be happening here, though, Jeff, is they could be applying pressure to Trump for him to take more drastic measures, at which point they could all point to Trump and say, you see, we told you he was a Hitler. We told you when you elected this man what he did. They're actually using the Supreme Court to do what they're doing. And whose fault is it? People don't follow. You know, they get their news online. They don't listen to people like you and others who are giving out the truth. It's the mainstream media. And I'm going to give you a perfect example, if I may. The story America Online, Newsbar, Newsbreak, Tennessee Star, the National Pulse, the Daily Caller, the New American. Why isn't anybody touching the story about a Boston mayor running for re-election, taking $300,000 from a member of the Chinese Communist Party? So if the newly appointed U.S. Attorney in Boston, Miss Leah B. Foley, I think your next job is to investigate any ties this money may have had towards her re-election. This is what's going on. The Democrats can break the law. They can ignore the law. They can do anything with the law. Biden did it. He ignored the Supreme Court. And just something for Elon Musk to think upon. In Massachusetts, for instance, people who are in prison, it costs us here $55,000 a year throughout to keep them in prison. Throughout the country, these lifers that are doing life without parole, send them all to Salvador for about $5,000 a year. But what I really think needs to do to uncover the wrongdoing in Congress, Jeff, it's April. Yearly, every Democrat and every Republican.
CJ, we ran out of time. But look, I hear you. It's a cesspool. We've got to clean it up. And this is Trump's golden opportunity. To the president, you've got to stand up to the Supreme Court. It's now or never. Bye-bye.